if you're dealing with dementia, that there's a lot of help out there. There's a lot of people to talk to. There's online support groups. There's in-person support groups. Now with COVID-19, there's Zoom support groups all over the place. Which is really great because sometimes it's hard for people to get away from their house. So I think the idea of being forced to do this Zoom thing could end up being a blessing out of this whole horrible ordeal, because there's a way to connect if you're lucky enough to have the technology in your home. But it used to be that you couldn't get away, and now you can actually get a support group, at home while you're still watching your loved one.
Welcome to the AlzAuthors Podcast. We're so glad you found us. I'm Mary Ann Shuko, a registered nurse, author, and dementia daughter. Join me each week to listen to one of our more than 250 authors talk about their dementia journey, sharing intimate details and painfully obtained knowledge to help others currently on that path. We hope these stories offer you comfort and support as we strive to break the silence and stigma surrounding a dementia diagnosis. May one of our authors speak to your experience.
Content presented on the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed during this podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent views of the Whole Care Network. Always consult your physician for medical and fitness advice, and always consult your attorney for legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
Robin Perini is an award-winning author of heart-stopping suspense and poignant romance novels. When not writing, she works for an advanced technology corporation. When not writing or working, she helps care for her mother, who has Alzheimer's and lives just across the street with Robin's father. An advocate for Alzheimer's education, Robin has woven the topic into two of her novels, Forgotten Secrets and Forgotten Legacy, Books 1 and 2 in her Singing River series. Her goal was to both entertain and educate her readers about the disease and to raise needed funds for the Alzheimer's Association. She happily donates a portion of the royalties from these books to the organization. As a writer, Robin is devoted to giving her readers fast-paced, high-stakes adventures with a love story sure to melt their hearts. Her strong characters and tightly woven plots made her a 7-time Romance Writers of America Golden Heart finalist. In 2011, she won the Golden Heart, and that title became her first Harlequin Intrigue novel, Finding Her Son. There are now 10. She's written 2 other series, including Montgomery Justice and Carter, Texas Connections, as well as several standalone novels. Robin resides in the southwestern United States. In her spare time, you might find her giving one of her many nationally acclaimed writing workshops or training in competitive small-bore rifle silhouette shooting. She's a voracious reader and a diehard fan of the TV series Bones. She's also an AlzAuthors Associate, bringing her advanced tech skills to cataloging our bookstore, a work in progress. In this episode, we discuss how her mom's Alzheimer's diagnosis changed her life, the challenges of caring for her mom at home while balancing work and writing, thankfulness, and the joys of finding the best home healthcare provider you can find. Hi, Robin. Welcome to the AlzAuthors Podcast, Untangling Alzheimer's and Dementia. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm great. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here, especially face-to-face, first time.
Oh, yeah. We're actually looking at each other on Zoom. So
right.
The podcast is not video, it's audio.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So it's nice to see you anyway.
Because it's better than talking to some weird random voice coming out of my computer.
Yeah, it's way better.
And we can see each other because we've been communicating for quite a while.
Oh, yeah. It's been a while.
One of the first, I think, that I invited to come in to the organization.
Oh, really? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it was quite a while ago. Yeah. And you're a fiction author, and I'm a fiction author as well, so I invited you. From that angle, we could probably talk a little bit about that. Your book, is kind of a, what is it, women's crime fiction?
Yeah, I would call it a romantic thriller, romantic mystery, something like that. It's I write romantic suspense, romantic thriller, romantic mystery, generally speaking. And so I've written 15 books so far. But the reason you and I ended up connecting was Forgotten Secrets. So I was starting a new series. I had finished up my Montgomery Justice series, which had been prior, and I was starting a new series. And my mom, who has dementia, had just she had come homebound. So it had been a much more serious. I'm a secondary caregiver, not a primary caregiver. But my mom and dad would travel 6 months at a time, or not 6 months, but 6 months through the year. So they'd live half a year across the street from me, and then they would travel the rest of the time, see my brother, the grandkids, go on outings. They did a lot of traveling, which is great, while they could. But then she was unable to travel anymore. And so when that happened, the whole thing changed, because I had been helping caregive, but she had been pretty independent. And in fact, one of the things she would do is when they were here, she would come across the street. My dad would still be asleep. She would get up early, come across the street, and use the code to get in my garage and come in. And normally I write before work, before my daytime job, between 5:30 and 7. So I write an hour and a half every day before work, and I'd be in my office, and she would almost inevitably at 7 a.m. pop into the house, and I would either be getting dressed for work or I would be in my office. So she was a good alarm clock to get me out of the writing room so I'd make it to work on time. And she would come in, and we would visit. I would be getting dressed, and she'd sit on the tub, and we'd just visit. And that was so special times. It was sad when there was just one day where she didn't come over, and she couldn't figure out how to get into the garage. So but I treasure all those times. I mean, that was one of my favorite things. But at that time, I was dealing with mom's disease, and I was trying to come up with a new idea for a book. And I came up with a really great heroine but I wanted a crime, and I wanted it to be interesting. And then I was also realizing how few people knew much about dementia. I mean, or they never talked about it, certainly. I mean, when mom got Alzheimer's, we got connected to the AlzAuthors Association here in town, who do a great job here. And my dad had taken a Savvy Caregivers class there with them. He had started in a support group. Mm-hmm. I remember when he went to the support group, and I would take care of mom for that time, and she would really be wondering where he was. And so I would say, well, he's gone to class. He's learning a lot of new things. Some of it's financial stuff, and he loved to do that anyway. So she believed me. I wasn't lying. I really tried hard not to lie to her, but Dad and I learned at some point, sometimes you have to lie to the disease, but I would try to circumvent it a bit. So I'd take her to Sonic. We'd go riding around and doing errands, which she really enjoyed doing with me. So we'd do that and that's the support groups were huge. And so when all that was happening is when I started realizing how few people knew about it. And I thought, what about having a crime where the only witness was someone with Alzheimer's who couldn't remember? Mm-hmm. And so that's where the gist of it came from. So I created a character, Graham, in my stories. And Graham is relatively early on. She can still draw. She's an artist. I'll tell you who she's sort of based on is Rose in Titanic. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you saw at the end of the movie, after she gets off the Titanic, it shows her learning to fly planes, and she does all the adventurous things. That's kind of Graham. Okay. And in a slightly different generation. So Graham did a lot of interesting things and had an interesting life. And so anyway, that's how I created her. But I knew that I couldn't dwell on it. So what I'm really trying to do is write a fun fiction book that's fast-paced thriller like I always do, but put some moments of poignancy within the story, and put in some moments of education about dementia.
Mhm.
In the second book I wrote, which is Forgotten Legacy, which is the follow-on, one of the things I did was I had been on a Facebook page, same characters, hero and heroine, but I had one of my characters talk about different kinds of dementia. 'Cause one thing I learned was in a Facebook support group was a lot of folks that they talk about Alzheimer's all the time and they don't talk about the others. They don't talk about frontal lobe or vascular or Lewy body. And it's almost like the folks with those dementias feel left out. And so I actually, during Legacy, I had a small little bit about all the different kinds of dementia. And I just tried to do a few little moments. Graham is not my mom at all, but there are moments that definitely exist in those books that are real. So that's how it happened. And the other thing I did was, when I did that, I decided to give 10% of my royalties to the AlzHeimer's Association. At first, I was just going to do it for Forgotten Secrets, but I've committed now to doing it for all the books in the series, in the Singing River series that I'm going to, and there are 2 so far. There's going to be 1 more for sure, maybe a few more, we'll see. Taken a little bit of, I've slowed down my deadlines since Mom became homebound. I just couldn't meet the same deadlines. I was writing 3 books a year for that. So yeah. So anyway.
So that's really, I enjoyed your books very much.
Thank you.
Good job. You just said what you had set out to do, and I think that you accomplished it. So
yeah.
I mean, I love fiction, and I think it's a great vehicle for education.
Yeah. I think it tells people, my hope is that it gives people a little bit of insight into Alzheimer's in a non-threatening way, just, and so there's 2 things about it. I do it for awareness, and then I do it for the money. So every month, quarter or so, I'll go and give the Alzheimer's Association a check, which is kind of fun.
Right.
I enjoy doing that. It makes me happy. So.
And it's read by people who read your work because they enjoy it, not because they're interested in Alzheimer's, and so they also get to learn
right
about these, even though it might not touch their life.
Yeah, it's interesting. The reviews on Amazon, or people have sent me emails, and it's amazing. The other thing that's happened is there have been people at work. I don't advertise my writing at work. It's just, I keep those separate, but there are some people who figured it out. They were on Amazon. Somehow I came up, and I've had people from work come up to me. I've now become the Alzheimer's expert at work. It's pretty funny, but yeah, people have come up to me and said, that's just how my grandmother behaves, or something like that. I get so many emails, and on Facebook, I get people contacting me, really appreciating it, but also just starting to talk to me about it. And I had no idea how many people it affected. I mean, I guess when you're not in that world, you just don't know. And it's so pervasive. I can't believe the number of people that it has affected. In so many different ways. And that's really been gratifying for me, because it feels very lonely when you're in caregiving, right? You feel alone sometimes. And that was really nice to really be aware of how we're not alone. But most people that I contact feel alone. Most people that I speak with feel alone. So I hope I've done a little bit to have people enjoy something, but educate them too. That's the goal.
That's a great goal. Can you tell us more about your mom and about caregiving? How is that?
Okay.
How is that affecting your life and your?
Yeah. So my folks are 79. I'll be 80 this year, and my mom has had Alzheimer's diagnosed since 2008. For 2 to 3 years, we were trying to get the diagnosis. I mean, we went to Mayo Clinic twice. Only the second time they finally diagnosed it. We went to, neurologists. We went the whole route. At one point, we went to kind of a health and wellness place because maybe it was hormonal, all those things that you do. And then the diagnosis happened. And my mom didn't want to talk about it. I mean, she didn't cry. about it. She's an Oklahoma farm girl, really tough, worked really hard all her life, and she just never cried. My dad and I have seen her cry 3 times about it. One time she was in the bathroom with my dad, and she said, "Why don't I know things anymore?" She asked him, and she started crying. One other time, I was with her in a car, and she had started forgetting. She and my dad would go to the mall, and they would go their own separate ways and then meet back at a fountain or wherever, right? And I was with her, and I had to go somewhere. And so I wrote on a Post-it note where to meet Dad, because she was starting to forget things. I mean, she could still go by herself, but she was starting to forget those details. And I wrote that on a Post-it note. I gave it to her, and it's like, Dad's going to meet you at 2:00 in front of Dillard's, And she started crying, and she said, "I don't want to be a burden to you and your dad." And so breaks my heart still.
Yeah.
That was her only wish. And so that was, sorry, I'm getting a little emotional. I try not to, but, and usually I'm pretty good about it. It just depends on what topic it is. That particular moment was really heart-wrenching for me. And those are the 2 times I really remember her crying. My dad said there was one other that she cried. But she didn't cry about it. She just, she moved on. And she did what she could do. My mom was not one to complain about things at all. It's just you do what you have to do. Mm-hmm. And as far as so as it got worse and worse, we did things like, make sure people knew before they were coming, or before we were going out to dinner, make sure people knew, because if she repeated them herself, we'd just say, she's got dementia, so just that's okay. I think the fact that she came over to my house and talked all the time, that I became more active in their lives, I guess, than maybe I would have been if they would have traveled a lot more, I think, once they had retired, because I had my own life before they moved across the street. But my mom, because they were in some ways stuck a little bit, couldn't do as many things, she would come over and say, "Can I do something for you?" And so it became a point where I would ask them to get my groceries. I was working on my master's degree. That took about 4 years to get at, working on my master's after work. And I would ask them to get my groceries sometimes and stuff. And that, not that I needed them to do that, but she seemed to like it, and she seemed to like helping. So that was one of the things. My mom was much a helper. So caregiving now, once she became homebound, it went from her being able to walk around, where now she can't stand up anymore, and she can't put any weight on her feet. So it takes 2 of us to care for her as far as all her daily living things. Somebody has to help her get out of bed and put her in bed. And then we bring her out of the bedroom and put her in a chair, and she sits in a chair most of the day, and we change her during the day and take care of her needs and feed her and all those things. Clearly she's still at home. So that's how we care for her. And as how it affects my life, one thing I did was I guess I narrowed my scope of my life a little bit. I looked at the things that were the most important, and the list is family and my job, pay the mortgage, family, health, trying to stay healthy and do as much as I can for me, and writing. And those were kind of the 4 things I did. I continued with my critique group. I continued with my local writing group. But things like movies on the weekend or other activities that I was involved in, those slowly but surely kind of fell by the wayside. I don't see as many friends as I did, but the ones I do are really good friends. I had to, there's more of an emotional toll than you realize, I think, sometimes, because you're just going through the motions. But I started having a hard time editing. I started having a hard time making choices in my edits. And I know that's a little bit of depression and a little bit of just thinking about them all, what can I do for my mom? So I actually talked to my editor and my agent, and I got extensions for deadlines and stuff. So I changed my writing schedule. I said I had 4 things. I can only do 3 of them really well at a time.
Yeah.
And pretty much writing and working out and eating right are the 2 things that get exchanged. If I'm really writing well, I'm not doing the other. And if I'm doing that, I'm not doing the writing well. The other 2, no choice, right? Those have to get done. But, you just accept it. And I think, so it changed my life. It became, like I said, but I don't have any regrets. I don't have, Mom didn't want to be a burden, and she might think, I think she might think she is, but that's not how we feel about it. We're just, I'm doing what she would do if it were me, or if it were my dad. That's exactly it. We're doing what she would do.
Mm-hmm.
So, and my dad is amazing. He's an absolutely amazing man. He's amazing. How much he loves her.
Yeah.
He tells her he loves her every night before they go to bed. He tells her he loves her every morning. He holds her. We put their recliners side by side so he can hold her hand. So he holds her hand most of the time. He treats her with such care. And so, yeah. Anyway, another little bit of, he's a true hero from my perspective. I'm amazed. People, it's interesting. I don't think we're doing anything crazily amazing by taking care of her, but a lot of people do, which is interesting to me. They're surprised. And every family is different. The fact that we can care for her at home is a real blessing for us. That's not a choice that everybody can make. And that's the other thing. There's no right choices, no wrong choices. You do what you can do, and you do the best you can. And so that's what we do. So I think it's made me appreciate more what I had. It's made me wish I could have asked some questions that I never asked, I think. There's times I'd love to ask her a question or talk to her about something, and I can't. So, so that's one of my pieces of advice to people is while the person still can speak and communicate, to really take advantage of that while you can. Particularly if things had happened in their past, because even though the short-term memory is gone, a lot of times that long-term memory stays intact longer. And so that's something. One of the things that I recently did was I created a book, a grandma book. My mom had filled out a legacy journal, and a legacy journal is like it asks you questions like, one sentence about all your brothers and sisters, or what's the biggest lesson your parents taught you? What's your philosophy of life? That kind of thing. Mom filled it about halfway out. I gave it to them years ago, but they were working when I gave it to them, and so they didn't get to it until they retired. And you can see Mom's progression, because as she was writing in it over the years, you can see toward the end where it'd ask her questions, and then she would veer off onto another subject and never get back to it, or she would repeat herself. You can actually see the progress of the disease from the beginning to the end. But what I did was I created this book. It's about 50 pages, and it's got 250 pictures in it, and then it's got stories. And it's for the grandkids, because they never really knew my mom. My mom. They knew this grandma who had dementia. They didn't know my mom. So I have stuff about when she was little, when she grew up. I have things, my dad and I put some stuff in there about what we thought she would tell them, advice. We just wanted the grandkids to know her. And so I'm going to do one for my dad too. And it came out really great. It was a great project. But like I said, there are things I wish we could have asked. She has 5 brothers and sisters, so we asked them a few questions. She's the oldest girl. But it was funny stuff. It was when she was growing up, they didn't want her listening to the Grand Ole Opry because it was too risque. Drinking songs, cheating songs. But then again, they let her go see Elvis in 1958 or 56 in Oklahoma City.
Oh boy!
Isn't that funny? So she didn't have electricity until she was 10 in her house.
Wow!
And they had an outhouse in the back with 2 holes, And she and her brother, they were about 5 and 6. They weren't supposed to go there together, but at night they were too scared to go apart. So they would sneak out and go to the bathroom together in the 2-hole outhouse. So it's just, she had chickens, and she milked Esther the cow every day before school, and all those things that the kids don't know about her. And it's just a different world from what they live in now.
Yeah.
She grew up in a different time. So, anyway, I enjoyed doing that. It was a good project.
That sounds like a cool project. And
yeah.
I do have some of those books in AlzAuthors too.
Yeah. They're so important. It's such an important thing to do, I think.
Yeah, the legacy project.
Yeah. I think I wish I had done it sooner, but I think what's really cool about it is my dad now is recording stories and things as well. He finished his legacy book and gave it to me and my brother for Christmas, but I have custody right now because I'm going to do the grandpa book. I'm working on it now.
How did you publish that?
So I used Mixbook, actually, is what I used. And what I liked about Mixbook, I did some research on which things like Snapfish and those kinds of things, which ones had the best pictures, but also I researched which one had good text. And the Mixbook had good text ability. So, I mean, it's not, it doesn't do spell check or whatnot, but it gives you the ability to put some nice big text changes, and it has templates like all of them do. And I just happened to use it. I liked it. I had a lot of templates, and I would throw in things, but the layout is mostly mine. And then I can print out as many as I want, as many copies. And you can also, so you can get them bound. You can get them with the leather cover and a dust jacket if you want to, or you can get it where they're with a matte finish, but it's the photographs that you put on it. So it's, and there's some that you can do that'll lie flat with like a spiral bound thing. So I have a lot of different options and different sizes. Mine is a 10 by 10 square, but you can do landscape ones, or, so it's not a commercial for them or anything, but it worked well. I'm sure there's others out there that could be done. I thought about doing it another way, but I wanted the pictures to be high quality, and so that I decided to use someplace that was used to doing that. And you just upload the photos and you do it online in a browse app kind of thing. So that worked really well for me. Wow. So I was happy with the answer. Yeah, with the result, I mean.
Yeah, no, that's really good advice to give to people. I hope some of the listeners will take you up on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to ask you, if somebody said to you today, my loved one has dementia, what would you say to them?
After I said, "Oh, that sucks," it really sucks. I would say a couple of things. For the next however long it lasts, expect the unexpected, because you just don't know what's going to happen, and you can't anticipate anything. You just can't. So don't have expectations, either expectations of good or bad or indifferent. I would say it's really, okay, this is going to sound terrible, but I said you're on your own. You're on your own. So what we found is you need to reach out, join a support group, communicate, ask for help, bring people into your life who can help you. If your loved one has someone that they trust, that that you can occasionally leave them with, you need a break. You've got to take care of yourself. The statistics on mortality of caregivers are scary and significant, and you have to take care of yourself. If you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of your loved one. We found that a lot of doctors don't understand dementia very well. A lot of doctors, their job is to fix things, and this is not fixable. So they don't know things. Mom ended up on hospice. She's been on hospice a couple of times. And we got some really good tips from one of the hospice docs, and hospice nurses for us have been fantastic. Well, the hospice doc, Mom had a UTI. This is one of the things you learn, right? If somebody starts acting crazy or weird, it could be a UTI. And it doesn't, and your loved one may not be able to tell you. So Mom was acting very strangely, and we didn't know that. But one of the doctors advised us to give her D-mannose, which is like a little supplement that you can get. It's powdered form that you can get. We put it in her orange juice, or there's a lemonade flavor one, and that's sort of it's kind of a real strong cranberry extract. And the hospice doc recommended that for prevention. And the other thing was using Hibiclens. And those two things, after we gave them, she's maybe had one UTI in 5 years now, and it's a really, it's huge. We also change her every 2 hours. And so those things are important. Yeah. You have to understand, I wouldn't tell them all this in the same time, by the way, because you don't know what you don't know yet, but it manifests itself in so many ways that that person's dementia is going to be different from every other dementia. They might be quiet, they might become passive, they might become aggressive. You don't know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And so, it's don't have any expectations about what it's like. And no matter how you care give, whether it's, in a nursing home or it's at home or it's a combination or it's daycare or whatever, it's okay. There's not any one way to do it, and you're not necessarily doing anything wrong, but you always will be their caregiver. So if they're in a nursing home or whatnot, you still have to make sure that they're being cared for. And that's still it's your responsibility to caregive no matter how you do that. And there's as many ways. So I guess those are the big things. Communicate with other people. People don't like to admit they have a loved one with dementia. I was talking to someone who said to me how much she appreciated what I was doing. I was writing some caregiving tips on my Facebook page. I do that during the Walk to End Alzheimer's every fall. I do it for about a month. And she said, we're putting my dad in a facility, and my mom doesn't want people to know. And my mom didn't want people to know. And I think it's because you're losing your memory. And it's this whole idea of, are you your memories? Is that the core of who you are? And when your memories are leaving, are you disappearing at the same time? I think it's that idea. I had a friend who does a lot of fundraising for just type 1 diabetes, and her son has it. And she said this is the disease that scares her the most, even dealing with a chronic illness like that from the time he was a child. So it's a scary illness. People don't like to talk about it. I think it's got even a different stigma than mental illness, than other types of mental illness. I think it's something else. I think it's also because if you have cancer, there are possibilities for treatment, and Alzheimer's disease, you can't cure it. So I think that's the other thing that makes people uncomfortable, is that it's terminal. And but I would say reach out to people, join support group, and ask for help when you need it, because it's going to be tiring over time, and you need to develop that infrastructure. And you're not alone. You're not alone. Mm-hmm. So, for what that's worth, I think those are most of the things I would say to someone. And I don't know that I tell them everything I know, and I don't know everything because I haven't lost my mom yet, so I don't know that piece of it. But I do have a mom who can't communicate and who can't speak, and can't do anything, and she laughs some. She'll squeeze my hand sometimes, and those are the day. That's what it used to be a smile that made me happy, and now it's a squeeze of a hand and the warmth of her hand. So different things will make you happy over time. Used to be, saying my name, but it's not anymore. So there's really nothing good about the disease at all. I can't think of one good thing. I really can't. It's not even a good thing. I've discovered how strong my family is, because it will destroy families. And I've seen that too. And you find out how, and I'm super lucky. My brother and my dad and I are on the same page as far as her caregiving, as far as her end of life decisions, all those things. We're in the same page, and that doesn't happen either all the time. It's tough. And when your family isn't all together, it just makes it that much harder. But you're not alone in that either, because that's common. Mm-hmm. It just is. So I would give anything if they were to find treatment, a way to stop it, something, just something, because it's tough.
Mm. Can you tell us a little more about your advocacy work? You mentioned the Alzheimer's Association and the walk of that.
So when a few years after Mom was diagnosed, I started thinking a lot. I started educating myself, and I realized how little I knew about dementia in general, how little I knew about what was going on. I mean, you're younger, you're not around as many people with it. My grandmother had cancer when she died with cancer. My other grandmother died, she passed away, her spine collapsed, she had osteoporosis. So I didn't have anybody in my life that had dementia. I have family members with Down syndrome and other kinds of illnesses, but nothing like dementia. So I didn't know anything about it. And when I understood that, I was like, okay, this is funny. The Walk to End Alzheimer's is something the Alzheimer's Association puts on. And I thought, well, I could raise a little bit of money that way. And I have a lot of author friends. And so I would put out stuff to my author friends and raise, $5,000 or whatever during the walk. And I was at a walk, and the 16-year-old girl got up on the stage, and her grandmother had Alzheimer's, and she wants to be a doctor. But she had raised, I think, almost as much money as I did, like $4,000 or $5,000. Doing a spaghetti supper. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I don't want to do a spaghetti supper. But I'm a writer, right? I'm a writer. So maybe, and at that point, I actually thought maybe about doing some sort of collaboration, how back at that time, about 2013, 14 timeframe, those collaborations were big. A lot, you'd have 15 authors going together, and it was to make money, and not as many were doing like for the firefighter fund or whatever. They weren't doing them as fundraisers at that time very much. And I thought, well, I could do that. Sorry. I could do that, right? And so that's when I decided to write Forgotten Secrets, and I decided to educate and donate the money. That's when I decided to do that. In the meantime, I started connecting with the Alzheimer's Association and when I started taking them checks and whatnot, I started talking to them a lot. And I do advocacy 3 ways. I do it with my books. I do it with the Walk to End Alzheimer's. And I do things to help them. For example, a few years ago, they have a big gala that's a fundraiser here in Albuquerque. So it's like a Dancing with the Stars kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. And they do a silent auction. And I went to one, and I didn't really know what to expect. I thought they'd have like really big ticket items, but they didn't. They had a day at a spa. They had a lot of different things. They had jewelry and whatnot. And so I asked the guys at the Alzheimer's Association, I said, what about some autographed books? And I said, I know some New York Times bestselling authors, and I have contacts with several, and I think I could get some, and I think I get some autographs. What do you think about putting like a book thing together of autographed books? And they were like, that's a good idea. Started talking to some of my friends. I've got a Lord of the Rings, not a Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones. I have an autographed Game of Thrones. Mm-hmm. I had Lee Child. Nora Roberts. Anyway, I got a lot of people. I thought I'd get maybe 10 books. I got 200 books. Yeah. 200 authors sent me autographed books, and 90% of those were New York Times bestsellers. And if they weren't New York Times, they were USA Today. It was amazing. I just couldn't believe it. I mean, Susan Elizabeth Phillips, and I mean, a lot of, just so many, just so many amazing authors. Gosh, half of them. My mom had it. My mother-in-law had it. My grandmother had it. My grandfather had it. My husband has it. Or, I mean, just amazing. I mean, it really showed me how many were touched. I had so many of those books that I didn't even know what to do with them all. So we used part of them, and they've continued to use those books for different events. Like there's a golf tournament, and they'll have a stack of books that are autographed. New York Times bestselling author autographed books, and that was amazing. So that happened. The other thing I did, which didn't ever go anywhere, but I still think it's a cool idea, is I put together this thing called a One Memory Challenge, and that was when the Ice Bucket Challenge was going on. And the One Memory Challenge, which has a Facebook page and all that, the whole point of it was you don't know when something's going to happen where you're not there anymore, where you have an injury, where you have a car wreck, you're unexpectedly die, whatever. Have you shared all the memories that you want to share with your loved ones? And this goes back to the legacy thing. And the One Memory Challenge, the point of it is to record either via video or audio or, a picture or just something you write, a story of a memory that you would want to share. And, it could be happy, it could be sad, whatever. What would you like your family to know that they may not know about? And record that and challenge other people to do the same. And then if they don't do it, have them, donate to the Alzheimer's Association as the alternative. There's several organizations. That just happens to be the one that I'm connected to because got such a good advocacy group here in Albuquerque. And so anyway, the One Memory Challenge was a little thing I did, but the thing it did do that was great, it got my dad to record a bunch of memories for the grandkids. And that was amazing. That was amazing. So those are sort of the three things I do. Mm-hmm. I'm also writing some articles related to banks and dealing with banks and people with dementia, dealing with banks and issues that come up. We've had some challenges. We thought we had everything set up correctly, and there have been issues. And so I'm working on an article on that topic that I want to put out there potentially. So I think when I retire from my day job, I really would like to get even more involved. But I have to keep, like I said, I have to keep things very small and very focused so that I can do my most important jobs, which are, taking care of my mom, helping my dad, keep my, dad and safe, and then day job, health, writing. That's all I can handle.
Does your dad have any help at home? Do you have hired caregivers or anything like that? We
do have a caregiver. We had visiting angels for a while. We used them to give my dad a little bit of a break. I would go over almost every evening and help. But then we had hospice, which was important because that taught us so much. And then during the hospice move, we ended up meeting our caregiver. And we have a caregiver who comes 6 days a week from 10 to, it's increased over time. She comes from 10 in the morning to 5. She's a blessing. There's a couple of things about Bobby. She's a CNA, but she's got a gentle soul. She's one of those people, when you walk in a room, it lights up, she just exudes this amazing care. She loves my mom. She has a daughter who was 6 when Bobby started caregiving, and her daughter would come over after school and would help her mom. And just at first I was thinking a 6-year-old kid with mom, because they can be crazy and wild. And Zoe was quiet. She just amazing. Just her personality is calm, and she just was amazing. And then Bobby had another daughter while she was caregiving, and Azriel is 4 now, but she's become like my dad's granddaughter. And there's something wonderful about having a little one in the house. When at one point my mom, when she could still speak a little bit, she heard Azriel cry, and she cupped her arms in like she was holding a baby, and she went, baby, 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 baby. So, I think that Azriel is well, she's a 4-year-old, but she's joyful. She's a joyful child. And the other day, my dad was holding her and rocking her in his rocking chair, and her feet were cold. And he reached over to my mom's blanket to pull a little corner of it to put around her feet because they're side by side. And Azriel said, no, Karen's. And she went and got her own blanket because that was Karen's blanket, my mom. So they're just sweet, but they bring a joy and a liveliness that I think really is helpful for my dad and for my mom. So having those kids in the house is wonderful. And Bobby is wonderful. And she's done things that I would have never have thought. At the time she came to work for us, Mom was soiling her Depends. And Bobby figured out when she needed to go, and she will walk her into the restroom. And she still does. My mom still goes 90% of the time in the toilet.
Wow.
Which is significant because the UTI situation, and I would have never thought she could do that. And what it is, it's just because it's such an instinctive thing, I mean, she watches her to make sure she's okay. And sometimes she has to sit there for 15 or 20 minutes and, till it happens, but that's worth it. From my perspective, for the cleanliness and everything else. But I would have never thought to do that. I would absolutely never thought to do that. Those are the kinds of things she does that not everybody would do. And so we're blessed to have a great caregiver. And so I firmly believe if you can get one, if you can get somebody good that you trust, that's a really great way to go. Like I said, we've increased the time over time. As Mom has gotten worse, we've needed more help, because it used to be that I could take care of Mom by myself, or my dad could take care of Mom by myself, and now it takes 2 people, really. Right. It just does.
Yeah.
And so
right there.
Yeah.
What happened to us?
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that's our situation. So it's not nearly as it allows my dad to do things, though he can't do as much as he used to be able to, because it does take 2 people when she needs to be changed or something. Though Bobby can do it by herself because she's magical. We laugh. We talk about how she's magical because she's amazing. So, but she, like I said, we're blessed.
You are blessed.
Yeah. I told my dad, we kind of have the Disney version of Alzheimer's, I think, in some ways. Mom was never combative. She became very passive. So we didn't have the cursing and the fighting and the hitting and all those other things that kind of happen. Has it been a long road? Yeah, it's been a long road, but it has been, I think what we do is we focus on caring for her. We focus on what she needs. We try to, and we've done that the whole time, really putting herself in her place, living in her world, not in someone else, not in our own world. So one time my dad was talking to her. She was probably living in, when she was around getting ready to go to college, about that. That's where she was living at the time. And she would ask my dad all the time if he was married. And he would usually say, I'm married to, and do you know her? And she would just laugh. She thought that was funny. Well, one time he didn't say that. He just said, would you marry me? And she looked at him and she said, oh no, you're way too old for me. I mean, it's even funnier because she's 10 days older than he is. So it's an even funnier thing, but we just laughed. Oh my gosh, that was so funny. And I guess some people would think, oh, that's sad, but it's, you can find humor in it. You have to find humor. You have to find a way to, I'll tell you what the best advice I can give on this, and I try to do it, is I try to be thankful for what we still have and not resentful for what we don't. So like I said, now it's when she squeezes my hand, or when, when she laughs, that I'm thankful for that. At one time, I was thankful for the fact that she could say my name or give me a kiss, and so, where I was thankful that she could still walk around, and I'm also thankful for the fact that she will spend a day laughing, and we don't know why she's cracking herself up. And as far as I'm concerned, that's way better than the alternative. I don't know what she's laughing about, but it must be funny. So, I think that if you can live that way, it helps, because people get so angry. The other thing is, put yourself in their shoes. So I've heard people get angry because they're always because their loved one is lying to them all the time and being sneaky and all that stuff. And I don't know if they're being sneaky or not. I don't know who they are, but I also know that probably, I think a lot of it is that they don't remember eating those cookies. They don't remember whatever it is. They don't remember that they didn't brush their teeth or they didn't take their medication. They just don't know. And people can get really angry, and it depends, I think, partly on the relationship, because some people have to take care of someone who they don't particularly like. And and that's really hard. It's really hard. But I think if you can put yourself in their world, I just think about how scary it would be to look around the room and not know what anything is that's in that room, or not who the people are that's in that room. How terrifying would that be? And I think if you can empathize a little bit, use a little empathy, I think it helps. We were always trying, it's not as big of a deal now because of her communication, but I always tried to figure out where Mom was. One time my dad was talking to her, and she was obsessed with going away to college. She lived in a very small town in Oklahoma, 13 kids in her graduating class, 13. None of them went to college, and she was supposed to go to college. And her first year of college was really tough because she didn't have a background. I mean, she lived in a town with 700 people, and there were 20,000 at the university she went to. It was such a culture shock. And so she was talking to my dad, and she was saying, I'm so scared. I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can go to college. It's not going to work out. I'm going to fail. She's just terrified. And she was obsessed with it, because that's the other thing. Dementia patients get obsessed with things. She was so obsessed. And my dad finally said, after several days of this, and we couldn't calm her down, he said to her, Karen, that's okay. He said, we'll go together and we'll figure it out together. It was over. It's fine. She just needed somebody to acknowledge that
What happened?
She did. Yeah.
Graduate?
She did. Yeah. She did.
And what she studied?
Home economics. And she graduated in 1962. So she was a 50s lady.
Yes.
But yeah. Oh, so it's funny because one of the things in this book I did was 4 of Mom's favorite special recipes. Mm-hmm. But also I have this little thing about etiquette, because one of the things Mom did was we had to we set the table and had to have the knives and forks like they were supposed to be. She taught me and my brother to set that table, and my brother's a way better cook than I am. I can follow recipes. My brother's a cook. He makes up his own salsa recipes. I kind of follow recipes, but when he was 10 or 11 years old, he was baking cakes and stuff like that. So my mom taught him to sew and to iron and all those things that, because she said, you've got to be able to take care of yourself. And she taught me the same thing. I'm not nearly the seamstress she is, but I can, handle a knife and a needle and a sewing machine if I have to. But she was a home ec teacher. And so she made my clothes when I was a kid. She didn't make his clothes, but she made mine, a lot of mine, until I was in maybe junior high, something like that. I remember the ugliest lime green, like overall jumpsuit with like M&M shirt. Oh my Lord.
Yeah.
Not good. Not good. But I think we all have those pictures, right? In the fashion. But anyways, yeah.
No, I'm not laughing. Where did that come from? You look at some old thing that you had on.
It's like, what was I thinking?
It's like, where did she get this?
Yeah, exactly. Where'd that material come from? So yeah, it's I don't know. It's funny.
So did you have anything else you wanted to share with our listeners today?
So I guess not really. I guess what I want to say is that if you're dealing with dementia, that there's a lot of help out there. There's a lot of people to talk to. There's online support groups. There's in-person support groups. Now with COVID-19, there's Zoom support groups all over the place. Which is really great because sometimes it's hard for people to get away from their house. So I think the idea of being forced to do this Zoom thing could end up being a blessing out of this whole horrible ordeal, because there's a way to connect. If you're lucky enough to have the technology in your home. But it used to be that you couldn't get away, and now you can actually get a support group, at home while you're still watching your loved one. It's a hard thing to go through. It's frustrating. There's nothing good about the disease, but it's, I guess I just my whole focus is on keeping my mom from being afraid, keeping her healthy and keeping her from being afraid. And if I think about her and I don't think about myself, focus on what I still have, that allows me. It doesn't mean I don't cry on occasion, and I cry in strange times at strange times, but there's a way you can get through it. You can get through it, and you're not alone.
That's a good message. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks, Marianne.
Thank you for listening to Untangling Alzheimer's and Dementia, an AlzAuthors podcast. For more details on this episode, please see the show notes. For more info on AlzAuthors, please visit AlzAuthors.com. While you're there, be sure to browse our online bookstore of more than 250 carefully vetted books on Alzheimer's and dementia. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Please email your thoughts on the podcast to alzauthors@gmail.com. Remember, you are not alone. One can sing a lonely song, but we chose to form a choir and create harmony.